Hey everyone, it's Corey again, coming to you from Alkali Lake. Today we are releasing a bonus episode of a collab we did with Stu of the Stu World Order podcast. Doug and I went on to talk about one of the most disappointing entries into the X-Men franchise, X-Men Origins Wolverine. The CGI alone makes it embarrassing enough, but then they also kind of tried to write dialogue. If you like what you hear from their show, go ahead and check them out wherever you get your podcasts. Again, that's the Stu World Order podcast. All right, Bub, let's get to it.
Welcome, everybody, to another edition of the Stu World Order podcast, where we review random comic book movies with our guests. And our guests today, we have two. It's Doug and Corey from the Culture Shocked podcast. How are you two today, gentlemen?
Excellent. Ready to talk about amazing movie.
Yeah, one of my favorites, really.
Well, before we get too much into that, tell everybody what you guys do out there at Culture Shocked.
Well, we don't hold ourselves to one topic. We pretty much, movies, video games, music, TV, anything really related to pop culture, we pretty much will talk about it. Yeah, there's really no subject we won't talk about, and I'm sure we're going to have about 1,000 episodes before we even get to the things we actually want to talk about.
Yeah, we even had a football episode.
We even had a football episode before the Super Bowl, so, I mean, there's really nothing we won't talk about.
That's fantastic. So how did you guys get started?
Roundabout, we all kind of knew each other our whole lives. Me and Doug met for the podcast, but me and the other two, Adrian and Mike, on the podcast, we knew each other from childhood. Adrian is my brother. And Doug knew them separate from me. We never really met until the podcast started.
Yeah, about this time last year, a little before this, Adrian shoots me a message. I hadn't seen him in a long time. He's like, "Hey, want to be a part of a podcast?" I'm like, "Let's do it."
And me and my brother have been talking about it for years because we've always kind of sat around just talking about this shit. And we were always like, we should put this somewhere. This is actually kind of interesting. And we never really had anywhere to put it. And because there's so many podcasts out there, we decided to put one out there too, and fight the masses.
So as of recording, you guys are up to, what was it today? 30 some episodes.
36 37 yeah. Tomorrow. Yep.
Oh, okay. What's coming out tomorrow? I mean, this will be the distant past by the time this episode comes out, but what do I have to look forward to right now?
Tomorrow is the phase 1 of the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Oh, interesting. All right up my alley then. I will be interested to check that out on my way to work tomorrow.
It was a very interesting one.
I have an opinion people don't like. I say phase 4 has been better than phase 1 so far. I think phase 1 has been the weakest phase thus far, and I haven't hated phase 4. So I think phase 4 has actually been stronger overall.
You're talking to the two people from our podcast that would agree with you.
The right two people came
The
on
other
the
two very strongly disagree. So
that's fine. That's what makes the world go round. I completely understand it. But I'm glad I have you two. Phase 4 forever.
I brought Doug along on purpose.
Perfect. Oh, that's beautiful. I can't wait to tell the other guy.
All right, so tell everybody out there, what were your 3 choices and why did you guys choose the movie that you chose to talk about? It seems like not a great choice, but then you look at what you guys had to choose from and yeah, maybe.
I think our 3 were Multiverse of Madness, Dragon Ball Evolution, and X-Men Origins Wolverine. There's no sum of money or item on earth that could get me to sit through Dragon Ball Evolution as a lifetime fan of that series. We had just done a Multiverse of Madness episode ourselves, and X-Men Origins Wolverine, like I said, I hadn't revisited since it just came out, so it was like, hey, that sounds like a good idea. Something different, something to mix it up.
Yeah, I haven't seen Dragon Ball Evolution since it was in theaters. I actually did go to the theaters, sadly, to see that movie. Yeah, that one hurts. I also am a huge Dragon Ball fan, and yeah, that's not good. I think it'd be fun to talk about, but, this is also going to be a fun movie to talk about. Poor X-Men Origins Wolverine, the maligned X-Men movie that kind of came out there, and they released 2 Wolverine movies after this that were better. This is, if I recall correctly, this is the first trilogy of movies that gets to be completed on my show, because we have previously talked The Wolverine and Logan, so we're finishing off the Wolverine trilogy here. And did you guys see this in theaters? Have you seen it before? Any previous thoughts before you watched it again?
I did actually see this in theaters back, like, I hadn't seen it in so long, like, since then, though, and I forgot why. I was like, the Wolverine movies were always really good. I guess part of my brain just shut off a chunk of this one, but not to get ahead of myself.
At the time, I went to theaters to see it twice, actually, and it was because we were just coming off of X-Men The Last Stand, and I kind of hated that movie so much that Origins almost was surprising for me because it had a lot of mutants that I wanted to see in the movies. Then when I went to see it the second time, which usually happens with me, I usually enjoy it the first time. Then the second time, my critical eye starts looking, and it was just a hot mess. Not even a good mess, a hot, very hot mess.
Well, let's get to the talking point right away now, because you brought up something I want to ask you guys since I have you. We'll just knock this right out of the way. X-Men Origins Wolverine or The Last Stand? I'm surprised releasing those two sequentially didn't kill the X-Men franchise, but... You know, now that you say that, it's been a while since I've seen Last Stand. I might want to say this is better, but maybe that's just because Last Stand was such a disappointment. Like, I went into Last Stand with such massive hopes after the end of X2, and it didn't meet them at all. Maybe this was just kind of like, I'm just hoping for something vaguely watchable, and it kind of met that, at least for me.
As a standalone movie, I think The Last Stand is okay. If it's the only one you saw, you'd probably enjoy it a little bit. But coming off that amazing first movie and that almost as good second movie, maybe as good, arguably, that third one just dove into the ocean.
I still remember sitting in theaters for X2 and the end when they're teasing Phoenix and everything. I was so beyond excited for 3. And then it had, actually, for me, it had the same problem that X-Men Origins Wolverine had, where it started off pretty good, but then they just said, oh, here's this, 60 years of source material with great storylines that are universally praised. Let's throw them in the fire and redo it for some reason. It's like, why? Why'd you do that?
At least they found their footing again a few years after these two movies. But yeah, what a bad stretch, those two in a row. But we'll start getting into X-Men Origins Wolverine here. We'll talk about, what this movie actually did accomplish or fail to accomplish. We will start off with the ups. And Doug, I'll have you lead us off. Give me your first up for X-Men Origins Wolverine.
I think the casting is probably my biggest thing. Is I don't think there was... all the acting seemed fine. I didn't have any problem with, and the choices for the actor. Obviously, Hugh Jackman is always going to be Wolverine. I always forget the guy that...
Leo Schreiber.
Yeah, he is incredible.
Or as I will call him until the end of time, Cotton Weary.
Hey, yeah.
Cotton Weary.
Oh, God, yeah.
Those two are just, talk about lightning in a bottle casting. They're just... It's hard. It's gonna be. It's like Ryan Reynolds with Deadpool. It's like I couldn't picture another person being in that role. That's gotta be my biggest up. The other one, honestly, the action scenes in the first quarter of the movie are really strong. Like the introduction, when it's showing them as kids and going through all the wars and stuff. Just that introduction, it started off so dynamite. It was so powerful, and then it just, I don't know, it just kind of fizzled from there. But those were my biggest ups. It was just that beginning sequence and then the casting. It's just so strong.
Yeah, this movie has an excellent opening credits sequence. It does not prepare you for what the rest of the movie's gonna be, but the whole thing with James as a kid, and then the flashes through all the wars, it is a fantastic opening, and it really gets you amped up for oh man, I'm gonna settle in for an excellent Wolverine movie, and then, the rest of the movie happens, and that is what it is, but that was definitely my first up. It was my big up. It was the opening montage, the childhood, the wars, this is great. Did somebody else come in and write and direct that, and then that person just wandered off set and they had to replace them?
I believe that's exactly what happened. They read the rest of the script after shooting the opening, and they bailed out.
Right before coming on tonight, I sat down to rewatch it for the first time in a very long time, and that opening sequence, I was like, this is going to be way better than I thought it was going to be. All right, yeah. Hell yeah. And then it just kept going. I was like,
It got you again.
It turned into that cool guys walking away from explosions movie, and I was like, what? Why?
Yeah. Yeah, after the first, 15, 20 minutes, it's just like, oh, something's gone awry here. All right, Corey, give me your ups for the movie.
Yeah, my ups, first of all, I had this written down because I had to say it, the montage of wars was, it's an up in any of these X-Men movies. I actually love it. I just like how it goes through these, and it shows the decline of Sabretooth and his mentality, and then it shows that Wolverine really always has been kind of the good guy. And he's trying to stop him from all these things, and he eventually just has to walk away from them. I think it's a beautiful opening. Even letting us have Wade Wilson back then, before he became the atrocity that is Weapon 11. He was Wade Wilson. He was a fast-talking asshole, which is exactly what he should have been. I liked it. And then, they ruined him after that. But my other up was, personally, Liev Schreiber. I like him in everything I've ever seen. Scream is one of them. You're very right about that. Scream 1 and 3, I think. Or wherever he was in there.
He's in 2. Yeah, he's barely in 1. He has a little bit bigger role in 2. And then 3, if I recall correctly, he dies early,
Okay,
but
3
he's all in the opening.
Yeah, okay. I like him, and specifically I like the line when he's in the bar and he hears Logan yelling, and he asks the bartender, "You have insurance in this place?" The guy says no, and he says, "Too bad." That's one of my favorite lines in this whole movie. I love the way he says that.
Yeah, Schreiber delivers good dialogue, and I want to look back at what you said there. That is another really fantastic thing about the opening to this movie is it's exactly showing and not telling. You're seeing exactly what you're describing about Creed just getting angrier and more violent and Logan being like, no, what are you doing? It shows that degradation in his mental state so well. And that's a really excellent point that I hadn't thought about. But when you're watching it, you don't need to be told Creed got angry or anything, because the movie just shows it to you. It's really well done.
And Logan is really that little brother that sticks with him no matter what. He still protects him even though he knows he's wrong. And it's kind of a beautiful moment. So
yeah, in that very beginning of the movie, he kills the guy that he thinks is killing his dad, but it's actually his dad, right? And then his brother comes up to him and was like, "No, you did the right thing. You deserved it, but we have to be strong and be together." And they were, but it showed right off the gate, it showed that Sabretooth was always the more animalistic one, where Logan was always the more grounded.
I like, what is the last line of that opening sequence? They're at the shooting, what is that called? A shooting...
Oh, the firing squad.
Oh,
firing squad.
Yeah.
That's it. Jesus, I lost words for a second there. Yeah, they're at the firing squad, and, Wolverine obviously seems distraught and angry over what's happening, and Creed just looks at him and says, see you when we wake up.
Yeah,
Wake
he's like,
me up
wake
when
me
it's
when
over.
it's over, yeah.
That's it, yeah.
Yeah, I was like, oh, beautiful. And he just looks at him like, mother, you son of
You know what? I'll get into my first up here and say this is going to be a controversial up. Make no mistake, Weapon 11 is terrible. It's a shame that they did that to Deadpool. You take one of the most interesting characters in Marvel and you turn it into that. Ignoring that that's supposed to be Deadpool, let's just assume that's generic Wolverine villain number 1. He's actually a pretty badass character. Just pretend he's not Deadpool.
He absolutely is a cool-ass character, having all the DNA of all those mutants put into him. Yeah, that was great. If they hadn't made him Wade Wilson, if they had just made this and put Wade Wilson's blood into it, if it hadn't been Ryan Reynolds, it would have been much better.
I 100% agree with you. That's been always the thing for me, is if they had just named him anything else, I would have been okay with it.
Well, they could have even still stuck with Weapon 11. That's fine.
Just don't tell us that was Wade. Just say that was somebody else. And I think this movie gets a lot more credence if you do it that way. But yeah, the fact that you're taking the Deadpool character and doing that to it just pissed off so many people. The movie was never going to come back from that. But yeah, the blades coming out of the arms and Cyclops' blast and teleporting, he's an awesome enemy.
Oh yeah, he had he was so powerful, and like the katanas out of the arms, like that was sick. And like what you saw, what he could do before he was like that thing.
He had the teleporting, which is one of my favorite mutant abilities from the comics.
And you tie their whole fight into the destruction of 3 Mile Island, and it's just like, oh, okay, I like that you're making this relevant to like something that actually happened in the world. It's just like, oh, but Deadpool, huh? Really? That's what you chose? All right.
Yep, that's Deadpool.
The other thing I like is just a moment in the movie. I didn't catch these characters' names. I don't even know if they had names. I just called them Jonathan and Martha Kent, the old people that kind of take Logan in for a while. It's such a weird scene in the movie, but they have him in the barn and they're talking to him about things, and their death comes out of nowhere. Like, if I recall correctly, Martha Kent is essentially in the middle of a sentence and gets her head blown off, and...
Yeah, she's trying to give him sandwiches.
Yeah.
She literally walks in with a plate of food, like a pitcher of orange juice and stuff. They're sitting there just chatting, looking at the jacket. Bullet through the window. Bullet through the window. Bullet through the window.
Like, I was completely disarmed in that scene. I was like, all right, we're having an emotional moment. Logan's going to talk to these characters. You knew they were going to die, but you didn't know they were going to die in that moment, in that way. And it really did catch me off guard. It's another one of those things that it's like, do more of this, X-Men Origins Wolverine. Do less of everything else you're doing. Give me more of this and the opening.
It's funny that you mentioned that scene, because, like, that sequence after that with the helicopter chase and everything, that's literally the point there. I think the quality of the film just dips is right after that. Like, up to that point, it's really strong, and then just
was
right
it
from that point?
Was it he has the helicopter fight scene, and then he goes off to Will.i.am and the Blob? Because if so, yeah, that was a terrible follow-up. Yeah, that's right.
Just everything from that point, it's just like it was so strong. He comes out of there after getting the adamantium. That's one of the most iconic scenes ever.
There are visuals in this movie that are beautiful. First of all, you get to see Hugh Jackman naked, jumping off a mountain. I mean, you know.
Yeah, Hugh Jackman put in the work, man. You look at him in this movie compared to X-Men 1 and X-Men 2, and it's like, dude, I don't know what you stopped eating and started eating, but you did the right thing.
That man wanted to look the part, and he did it. But, I'm so put off by, almost to the point of shutting the movie off sometimes when I'm watching this. When he takes his claws out in that bathroom and Mon Park's bathroom.
Yeah.
It's such bad CGI. And then he starts breaking things in the bathroom like he didn't always have claws. He always had them. He knows they're there. And why are they knife-shaped? He had bone claws. There's no reason the adamantium should have made knives in his hands.
I have hated that since Wolverine number 75 in the comics, where they revealed that his claws were bone underneath the whole time. I was like, they're spokes. All this time that they've been coming out of his arms, they've looked like knives, and yet when the adamantium's gone, they come out and they're spokes. It's like, why was the adamantium flattening them? That makes no sense.
It makes no sense whatsoever. And if it did flatten them, wouldn't it have healed?
Yeah.
I don't understand.
And it's actually funny because, like, since I just watched it, I noticed how bad that CGI was. And the funny, like, when you look at the bone claws they did, I think they used, like, an actual, like...
Yeah, those looked okay.
I don't think those were CG, the bone claws.
I think on certain shots they weren't. I think it was practical.
Yeah, because they looked really good. And then, like, those came out, I was like, that looks like a cartoon suddenly is coming out. It's like, what happened?
Yeah, the metal claws look so much worse in this movie than they did in the earlier X-Men movies. It's like, how did you go backwards?
They went very far backwards.
All right, well, let's officially get into the downs here, since that's kind of where the conversation is taking us. And Corey, we'll start off with you on this one. Give us your downs for the movie.
Well, my first one is the crazy bad CGI the whole way through this movie. The claws in the bathroom, the claws going through the helicopter blades. When Sabretooth is walking up to Silver Fox's car, and he puts his claws in the hood and goes up the hood. So fake. I could make a better one on my phone. I hated it. I hate that so much. And the other down for me is I absolutely hate the plot device at the end of this movie to have them shoot him in the head with adamantium bullets and he just forgets everything.
That makes no sense. That's not how bullets work.
I hate it.
I'm pretty sure that's not how a bullet to the brain works. And I'm just assuming here, so he has an adamantium skull They shoot him with an adamantium bullet. It should still be in there, right? Because it didn't blow out the back of his head, and yet we've never seen, like, anybody who's done an x-ray of him and been like, oh shit, there's a bullet in your brain. Like, they just made that up. They had no idea what to do. Why wouldn't you just have them wipe his memory as part of Weapon X, then try to throw in that stupid plot device?
They literally they showcase tons of mutants, and, like, Wolverine has always had his mind wiped by a mutant. Like, that's how it's always been. Like, that could have been such an easy little thing they did.
It would have been easy.
Even if you tied in Stryker's son, who we saw in X2, if you had him come in and be the reason that he forgot everything, at least that's something.
Yeah, and X2 actually is a good... X2 is a good example of adamantium on adamantium. He fights that, whatever her name is, I don't remember her name.
Lady Deathstrike.
Lady Deathstrike. And every time they connect adamantium, it doesn't go through each other. So the bullet wouldn't have gone through his head anyway. It would have stopped at the skull and fell off.
You would think.
And he's been shot many times. Is an adamantium bullet a harder hit? Why is it making his brain rustle around in his head? None of it makes sense.
No, it doesn't. You're 100% right about that. That always bothered me about this movie also.
Why'd the bullet pierce the adamantium skull at all?
All right, Doug, take us into your downs for X-Men Origins Wolverine.
It's... okay, my biggest down, and this is, I think, just a product of movies from that time period that I've kind of just forgotten in action movies, is that unnecessary sequence to have people walking away from obviously CGI'd explosions.
Yeah.
And it comes right back to that helicopter sequence at the end when he sparks the ground to light the gasoline and he's walking away and that explosion, and it's just like, wow, that looks bad.
Don't get me wrong, I was glad to see Zero die, but it could have been done in a much cooler way.
Yeah, it's just because they reused that same, like, I gotta walk away from, like, this fiery explosion sequence over and over.
I know, it's become such a weird trope, and anytime a movie references that sarcastically now, this is the movie I've always thought of, because the scene is like, oh yeah, it's that, okay.
Yeah,
it's only ever legitimately used now in comedy movies.
Oh, yeah.
It's funny.
And I think the biggest down for me, I feel so... It's obvious. It's the Deadpool thing. It's just, you had Deadpool. You set him up to be Deadpool, and then you didn't give us Deadpool. Like,
yeah, I will never understand what they were thinking whenever they made that choice for that character here. I mean, you get to the point, if you actually sit through the credits in this movie, you get the thing where, like, he finds his head and his mouth opens up, and it's like, oh, okay, we're gonna give you a Deadpool movie, but why would you even do this to begin with? Like, you've given us this crap version of the character. I don't want to see any more of Barakapool.
When his head gets cut off and the laser eyes are still shooting and it's falling, why did they stop? That's always been my other thing. Like, it was still going. Why weren't they still laser at the end?
They put as little thought as humanly possible into this movie. They didn't want to be concerned with any of that stuff. They're just like, we're just doing stuff to do it. Bullet to the brain. Yep. Just does what we want it to do. Adamantium goes through adamantium fine. Why do his eyes stop? We just need them to. Otherwise he's shooting lasers from now until eternity.
And if they just would have listened to Ryan Reynolds, they would have figured out he knew what he was talking about.
Yeah. I mean, I guess that's kind of the hidden up of this movie, is this movie indirectly did give us the Deadpool franchise. So, I mean, God bless that at least.
And thank God for that after credit sequence where they make fun of this movie in that movie.
Definitely. I'm going to get into my downs here and say, we've talked about the stupid things in this movie that don't make any sense. For a guy who was kidnapped by the government, presumably tortured, escaped and ran away, Gambit isn't hiding at all. Like, as soon as people decide, like, oh, we should find this guy, they immediately find him. It doesn't require any searching. It doesn't require any, like, oh, let's enhance and zoom in on a security camera somewhere. It's just like, he's probably playing cards somewhere, because that's what he does. And then Creed and Wolverine find him like that as soon as they start looking.
I think it's always been kind of Gambit's thing that he's an arrogant prick, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think he really was trying to hide. But for getting as scared as he did when Logan brings up the island, you think he would still be kind of recovering his clear PTSD.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, he's clearly afraid of the island. He's clearly afraid of what they did there. And so I get what you're saying. Like, he's a cocky asshole. He doesn't really care. But that doesn't match up with what the movie also tells us. So you can't have us be like, oh, he's too cocky to think he needs to hide, and he's terrified of the notion of going back there. These are two discongruent things here.
But this movie's not known for thinking. So.
That's what we said already, yep.
Well, we're on it. Still waiting on that Gambit movie, by the way.
No,
get on that.
Poor Channing Tatum. He really wanted to do that movie, apparently, but
that would have been good.
Even Taylor Kitsch had a hell of a potential. He looked the part. He did a decent job in that movie, and they even displayed the little, the cards lighting up and shooting them at him. I mean, they showed Gambit in that movie. Just not enough of them.
Yeah. And so my last down to round us out on the downs is going to be the death of Silver Fox, because that just wasn't well handled. Because when she dies, you either immediately know she's not actually dead, whether it's because you've read the comics and you know she's coming back, or it hints at her having powers but doesn't do anything with them, so you know they're going to come back to that point, or you just know how movies work and like, oh, this character's been around for 5 minutes, she's clearly going to come back later. Or if you don't believe that she's not coming back, you don't care because she'd only been around for 5 minutes. You're not attached to this character at all. So her death is utterly meaningless. You either don't care or don't care for a different reason.
And the scene right before it, she tells the story about the moon. So she just told you what's about to happen right before it happens.
And can I point out the obvious? Wolverine is known in the comics and movies for having sick senses. Like, he can sense anything, basically. Are you telling me he walked up to her dead body, didn't see any cuts or anything, just saw a bunch of blood? And even though she had that drug given to her that slows your heartbeat, the dude can smell miles away. He can feel a heartbeat no matter how faint it is. And that wasn't handled very well.
Yeah, so she dies in this movie. To be honest, I watched this movie and I had forgotten she was in it. And then when the part comes around where she's in, I was like, oh yeah. And then 5 minutes later, she's dead. And it's just, okay, that's cool. I know she's coming back. This is fine.
Did they even say her name at the beginning before she died one time?
I'm assuming. I mean, they definitely never call her Silver Fox that I remember, but what's her name? Kayla? Is that what she's called in the movie? I assume they called her that, but I'm not sure, actually.
I don't even remember hearing them actually call her by a name. They referred to school. They called her a school teacher once, and
that's it.
I don't
even know if
they
teacher
named her before killing her. So
yeah,
like,
all my notes just say Silver Fox because I know that's who the character is, but I'm relatively sure they never refer to her as such.
No, they didn't. I can tell you that.
They tend to not do that in these movies when they have a character like that. Like, Will.i.am's character's name is Wraith, I think, and they never called him that. And they only called Blob because they wanted that joke thrown in there. Did you say Blob?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, and it clearly didn't.
Yeah, I know. Bub doesn't sound like Blob at all.
No.
This doesn't change anything between us, Victor. We're done.
We can never be done, Jimmy. We're brothers, and brothers look out for each other.
Okay, we're back. We talked the ups and many of the downs for X-Men Origins Wolverine. We are going to get into our ratings here and score it out of 10. I'll start off on this one and say, yeah, this movie's not great by any stretch of the imagination, but it does have those moments, like we said, the beginning, really good. Just the stuff they do with the Kents, that moment where they die is handled really well. And then it just seems like different people directed and wrote different parts of this movie. It's just so uneven. If you didn't make the villain at the end Deadpool, people would like it more. I'll give it a 4 out of 10. Like, it's below average. It's bad, but it's not unwatchable. It's short enough for what it is. Like, they didn't try to push this movie to 2.5 hours just because it's a big X-Men blockbuster. It's just, they made so many mistakes, and The one thing that bothers me, look, I know characters age. I know you're not casting the same characters for different roles and anything, but Danny Huston is no Brian Cox. Like, you gave me Brian Cox as William Stryker, and that's all I'm ever going to accept. Like, you can't give me Brian Cox as an actor and then be like, and now here's someone else playing that same character. That's going to fail like 95% of the time. So it's a 4 out of 10. It's not abysmal, but it's not good. Corey, go ahead. Give us your rating.
Let me say, you were absolutely right about this feeling like a multi-anthology movie. Like they released that Batman movie where it was like 5 different writers and 5 different stories. This movie felt like that, all crammed into one. I don't like that it felt like multiple visions. Gavin Hood really isn't known for much. I mean, I think he did. I don't even remember what else. Ender's Game, I think, is like his big claim to fame.
Oh, okay.
And yeah, so this is because I can watch it, because Hugh Jackman is in it, and Liev Schreiber is absolutely a beautiful Sabretooth. I wanted him to come back for more and more and more. It's also a 4 out of 10 for me too.
All right, Doug, what do you have?
I think I'm gonna be a little nicer to this than you guys, like, because I think the action sequences, like, if you just want to sit down and enjoy a couple decent like action sequences, like, and you're just hanging out with some friends or something, not taking it too seriously, I'd give it like a 5 out of 10. Like, it's something you can just sit down, throw on, and waste some time and enjoy a few fights, and just try not to pay too much attention to the other stuff. And it's not that miserable, but I'm not racing out to go out of my way to see it again. That's for sure.
It's one of those movies where don't think about anything. Just watch it. Just let it be what it is.
Shut your brain off, do some dishes, have it on in the background.
Exactly. Like, you just want to see a couple decent action sequences with some stuff thrown in the middle of them. And you got X-Men Origins Wolverine.
All right, guys. Well, let everyone know where they can find you at Culture Shocked.
Culture Shocked. We're on all the socials. On Facebook, we're just Culture Shocked Podcast. Instagram, we're Culture Shocked 21. And on Twitter, where I do most of my work, we are CS Podcast 21. We're on all the podcast streaming and podcast downloading apps. Any of them, just please go on there and give us some 5-star ratings and reviews. And if you want to get on Twitter and tell me I'm wrong, I love that. It's my favorite thing in the world. So
Tell
please
us how
come
much
at me.
You
I
like
love it.
Deadpool and X-Men Origin Wolverine.
Please tell me that.